Raheem on Lake? Are you expecting him returning, and how do you just kind of evaluate his overall year?
We got to evaluate all of our coaches. We got to evaluate all of our players. We got to evaluate everything that we do from a whole program standpoint, and we will do those things. That's what starts today, Daniel. That's when we'll get out there and get those things going. We'll have a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of everything to evaluate everything. We'll have a chance to get back together and really talk about these things, and that's the process that happens now.
Welcome in, Falcons fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis, back at it again for more Atlanta Falcons content. Obviously, the end of the season is here. Falcons missed the playoffs again. Another losing season again. Vibes are low amongst all Falcons fans right now. And a lot of questions are going into this offseason. Questions about certain coaches, certain players, all of it. And I'm going to give my thoughts on it today on this episode. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoy the episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video, show some love to you, boy. Appreciate all you guys for letting me be a part of your day. But let's go ahead and dive right into it. So Raheem Morris had his end of season press conference. Terry Fontenot will not speak to the media until Thursday. Obviously, Morris is a very highly debated person in Falcons Twitter, Falcons Facebook, Falcons social, wherever, about his future. I will say in the presser today, when asked about Jimmy Lake, he was non-committal. It said all the coaches are still under evaluation. Last time he was non-committal by a player, that was Kirk Cousins, and he got benched. So could that mean Jimmy Lake is on the way out? I am a person who has said on record that Jimmy Lake, yesterday especially, Jimmy Lake should be fired. He is not an NFL coordinator, and it was showed. I think out of the two coordinators that he hired, Zach Robinson was the guy who had a lot of hype, who had a lot of, he's a bright offensive mind. People were looking at that hire as a home run hire for new offensive coordinators. Jimmy Lake, he was the one that you questioned. He was the one that you had the most like, okay, can he coach, basically? And coming out of a year, I think everybody is in agreement that he is not the guy. And the defense didn't even start to play better until Raheem Morris had to become more involved. To me, if you have to become involved as a head coach to get your defense to be right, you're clearly showing me your defensive coordinator is incapable of doing that, especially after the last game of the season. Bryce Young, as much as he showed improvement, and I am happy for Bryce Young because I want that young man to be successful, he shredded the Falcons defense completely. Just breakdowns across the board, 1st and 20, first downs. Like, what are we doing here? And Raheem said it after the game. The defense regressed. The defense took a step back, and that was highly disappointing. And to me, I'm like, one of the biggest games of your season, your defensive coordinator can't even cut out a decent enough game plan. I think it's time for Jimmy Lake to go. And I think Raheem needs to have the balls to make that decision. Some people question if he will make that call. He has to make that call. There is no way you can sell this fan base. There's no way you can tell Arthur Blank that Jimmy Lake gives you the best chance to win on the defensive side of the ball. There's just no way. Because I can say for Zach Robinson, even though he's not perfect, anytime that offense clicked, they scored 30. When they had competent quarterback play, they scored 30, 25, 28. So the offense, everybody's excited about the offense in 2025 because Michael Penix looks like he's going to be a hit, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And you've got Bijan coming off a great year. Drake London, great. You get Darnell Mooney back next year. Obviously, the biggest question you're going to have is about Kyle Pitts and then if the Falcons are going to do anything at the tackle spot. Outside of that, offense pretty much, I think that's the one part of the offense we feel good about, or one part of the team we feel good about. But defensively, until we see changes, I don't think there's going to be a lot of comfort. I think you got to make a lot of changes, not just at the defensive coordinator position, but at D-line coach as well. And maybe even linebackers coach dependent. But that's just me, right? And there's even and there's plenty of good defensive coordinators who are available, who don't have work. Robert Saleh, Steve Wilks are two guys. Steve Wilks just coached a Super Bowl defense, and people questioned his firing against the 49ers. Robert Saleh has always had a good defense. I mean, some people have even mentioned Jeff Albright as a guy, former guy who was on the staff before with Raheem when under Dan Quinn. And maybe he gets a chance at calling the defense. I mean, there's guys out there that you can bring in a more, because I feel like in this situation, you need to bring in a more veteran, proven defensive coordinator to coach this defense. And I think that's what's going to get you more likely. It will be a good start if they fire Jimmy Lake. I'll say that. Because like I said, a lot of people are questioning if this front office is competent enough right now to get the job done with the talent they've had and to still finish the season with only one more win than you had in the last 3-4 seasons. So obviously that's very frustrating. And that is one of the biggest changes they need to make is Jimmy Lake needs to be fired. If he is not, I will lose a lot of confidence in the regime. I'm just going to be honest. I'm being brutally honest with you right now. Listen, I know there's a lot of questions with Raheem, and I know there's a lot of questions with Terry. I get it. All right. And I'll get into their job status and security here in a minute, too. But that's the first dying issue that I think they need to do is address that and get him out of here. Obviously, if Raheem gets fired, which I don't think is going to happen, I believe that's going to happen, as much as people want that to happen. Jimmy Lake got to go. Right. And so with that, let's talk about Raheem. So obviously a lot of people are just like, the signs are there. He shows he's not better as a head coach and that we need to cut our losses now and we need to try to get the home run higher, right? Based off that presser that we heard from Raheem Morris, it sounds like he is fully expecting to be here next year, which I think a lot of people after that presser kind of got the same thing. I just, people are looking at what the Patriots did with Gerard Mayo and said, well, why can't we do that? Completely different situation. We have seen a lot of guys in their first year as head coach be fired who were already expected to be bad, and then they were still bad, and then they just fired them because they said, we don't like the vibe of where this is going. It's a little bit of a different situation with Raheem. As much as you think this team is the worst team in the league, because every team thinks their team sucks to the worstest degree. We are not the worst team in the league. We are 15th in the draft. We are an average football team. That is what we are. We are not a bad football team. We're an average football team. We have things that are not good, for sure, that you may be able to say is bad. That is fine. But trust me, we just played the Giants. We're much better than the Giants. They're a bad football team. We blew them out. So we're not bad. But we're not good either. We are average. The offense is clearly the good part of the team. The defense is clearly the bad part of the team. And I know that reflects a lot, especially after that Commanders game, the game management blunders that Raheem made. A lot of people start questioning, has he even grown as a head coach? But for me, I am a person who believes that you cannot fire a coach after 1 year unless there is something terribly wrong. Either the players hate him, he doesn't get along with the front office, something. There has to be a disconnect to a certain group of the football operation to cause a firing. As far as I'm aware, him and Terry are on good terms. The players love him, right? And so, okay, there's nobody dislikes anybody in the building. So, I can see why they just feel like there's no point for us to make this change. Because I've always said, this has been my philosophy. If you're rebuilding a team, you get 3 years. If you are going into a win-now team, you get 2. So he's not going to get the 3-year luxury to me. He gets the 2-year luxury. Falcons got to be postseason team or he's fired next year. That's as simple as I can put it to you. And a lot of you watching this video may already assume he is not going to do that and he needs to be fired now. I'm sorry, you're out of luck. Unless Blank makes a crazy call, he will give Raheem Morris 1 more year to get this team to the postseason. And he has to show them and show us that he can make the necessary adjustments and changes needed to make that happen. Because this Falcons season is very much flared in 2 things. The defense being ass and the quarterback play. Kirk Cousins struggled at the beginning of the year, right? You went about what? Falcons started the year 1-2, right? Quarterback play was, shaky. October came around, balled out, right? That's when the Falcons started to get to 6-3, right? It looked like, yes, the team is going to be on its way to an NFC South division, no championship. And then the collapse, which started with the fact that Kirk Cousins deteriorated physically. And people wondering, why didn't Raheem make the move quicker to get off of Kirk Cousins? How much did the money play a factor in that decision? All of those things are out on the table, right? And so, for me, the collapse obviously is tough. Because now I set this on social media, on my Twitter, Bryce_2K. Y'all follow me. Falcons fans sold out season tickets this past year, which was the first time in a while. a lot of Falcons fans believed in what they were, the product that they were getting sold. And we still got this. Falcons fans will never, I feel like, are going to have a very hard time trusting this team until they basically clinch a playoff spot. Because now the fans gave you support and you still couldn't get the job done. So now those same fans are not going to renew season tickets. I don't care if the Falcons hit the free agency home run. Obviously, you'll get some people back from that in a draft home run. You're going to get naturally people back from that. But there are still going to be people who are still extremely, extremely skeptical of this team and if they can get the job done. And Raheem's going to be under fire for that. He will be pointed at for that if he cannot get this team to where he needs. That's why I mentioned the Jimmy Lake signing. That's the first thing you can do is hire a much better defensive coordinator. And once you have the two good coordinators, now we can say, okay, feels like coaching is in place here. But now we need to see the results on the field, right? So Raheem, I think, back another year. I know some people hate that. If you hate it, leave it down below in the comments and tell me why you hate it. That's fine with me. But if you also agree with giving him one more year, because, I mean, here's the thing. It's not like this guy has 2-3 years of security. This man pretty much is in a one-year situation after this year. Pretty much is like, I got to get it done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, oh, maybe he'll get a second year. No, this is a win-now team. He's not going to get that third year like Arthur Smith did. He's not going to get that. This is listen, you got to figure it out, brother. And so we got to see if they're going to figure it out. So that's just kind of how I look at it, right? Terry Fontenot obviously is another name who's been under fire, who has been under a lot of stress and scrutiny about should he be fired. Again, Arthur Blank has always believed in continuity. That is one thing. And people will hate it because that means he will hang on to someone for continuity. I don't think he's going to change the GM because here's the issue on top of that. If you bring in a new GM and you keep Raheem, then if Raheem fails next year, technically, even though it wouldn't be fair, you could technically say, well, the GM had an imprint on this next version of the team, and they still couldn't get over the hump, so he has to take some of the blame. And it would look bad if they fire Raheem and have to then fire the GM that you just hired to replace Terry. That's why it's almost like you have to keep them together. Just because then if you don't fire the GM, now the GM's getting a new head coach. But again, the GM's already been there a year. So, you know, and people are going to have their opinions about the GM and the moves they make already, regardless of the situation. Y'all are going to have your opinions after a year. That's what people do. And it muddies up the process. So the big thing Arthur Blank probably will go for is continuity. Now, again, he could fire Terry Fontenot. And I know a lot of people want Terry fired because he hasn't had a winning season as GM of the Atlanta Falcons, and he's not put together a good enough team for 4 years. And we all can say that is actually true. Now people make it seem like he hasn't done a single thing. That is not true. He drafted Drake. He drafted Bijan. Drafted Penix. You know, he drafted, Dahlman. He drafted, yes, he did draft Dahlman. He drafted a lot of the guys that are big parts of this team. There are guys next year like Rook Aurora and Dorless who are going to be expected to step up. Braylon Trice is coming back next year, so we're going to start to have more of an opinion about this previous draft class. But also he has some misses, obviously. Kyle Pitts, huge question mark. Number 4 overall pick, hasn't produced like a number 4 overall pick, which I'll get more to that in future episodes. Obviously, Troy Anderson, injury issues. Hasn't worked out. Richie Grant, obviously hasn't worked out. The jury's still out on Clark Phillips just because, there's flashes Clark Phillips shows you. So right now he's just a rotational corner. Don't know if he could be a starting corner, right? A lot of his lower end draft picks don't really do much and end up getting cut. 7th round, 6th round picks. So a lot of his picks, he's not finding steals in those later rounds. There's a lot you could say about what he's done. Obviously, and the biggest blemish on his resume is Kirk Cousins in that contract and the fact that now you paid quarterback all that money to not be your starting quarterback, right? Which there is news on that. So there's been a lot of reports already since the Falcons season is over about what the Falcons are planning to do with Kirk Cousins. and what his future is going to be. There was a report today, Cameron Wolf from NFL Network. He mentioned that the Falcons are not planning to release Kirk Cousins and that they're planning to actually either get something back for him in a trade. And the thing about a trade is that they'll be able to negotiate with a team to take on some of that salary to help lower the cap hit. Or, as I've said that they might do, they are open to keeping Kirk Cousins as a backup quarterback next year instead of cutting him. And so that is something that is extremely interesting to hear from them. Obviously, I don't know how a lot of people feel about if he was on the roster next year. I guess it's good to have a good veteran quarterback behind. He'd probably be considered one of the best. And again, if he's physically shot, then obviously, I don't know if he would be one of the best backups in the game then. But you would assume that he would be in a better condition next year, not playing, and they're open to that. So some people wonder if this is going to force Kirk's hand because he has a no-trade clause in his contract, right? Which a lot of people ask, why does Kirk have a no-trade clause? A lot of quarterbacks signing these new deals or getting no-trade clauses is becoming a norm in the league. So that's just going to happen. That may be something that Michael Penix gets in his next contract, just because, again, that's just becoming a norm in the league, right? But this situation will allow them, they're trying to still have control of the Kirk Cousins situation and have the ability to say, we're going to get rid of you or keep you on our terms. We're not going to allow ourselves to just take a cap hit, have all this dead cap, and you're not on our roster. That just seems like something they're trying to do. Obviously, we'll probably hear more about it as we move forward into this offseason, but that is something that has already been discussed, talked about, and reported by a few people. Some people are going to still report they're going to cut him. Some people say they're going to try to trade him. We've heard some connections to teams. We heard Cleveland is a team that has interest in Kirk Cousins. Could they potentially give up some draft capital for Kirk to bring him onto the roster? I'm saying we're going to get the most wildest QB contest of all teams. Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson. What a contest. That's one team that he's been directly connected to. And we'll see if other teams get into that conversation as well. So we'll have to see. But that's the update on Kirk Cousins from that perspective. But Terry Fontenot, a lot of pressure on him. A lot of people want him fired, right? But even through all the negativity, even through all of the uncertainty that this Falcons team has right now, with all the major questions and some of the decisions they have to make coming up, the one thing I think everybody feels good about, and they haven't felt good about for years here in Atlanta, is the quarterback position. Michael Penix put on his best performance of the season in the last game of the season. He went toe-to-toe with Bryce Young, throwing dimes, throwing dots, showing the arm talent, showing the strength, showing the accuracy, had a rushing touchdown, doing it all. And I think a lot of people are excited about what Michael Penix will become into a full offseason, taking all the reps, getting the chemistry with the receivers, and what he will become going into his second year in the league. Again, with them probably keeping Raheem Morris, that will mean he'll get a second year in the Zach Robinson system, another year to get more comfortable, another year to get more chemistry, another year to get on the same page more of everybody. And maybe there's certain things that Zach Robinson wasn't able to do or show with Penix that he will bring out next year. And so I'm excited to see the growth of Michael Penix Jr. moving forward. He looks like an absolute baller. And that is something that the Falcons have not had at that position since Matt Ryan. And they are very hopeful that they have found their guy for the next decade to be the guy for this team moving forward. Because that is one of the biggest downfalls every year is the quarterback position. Listen, Kirk Cousins had the worst stretch of his career and single-handedly cost the Falcons the NFC South. We can blame Raheem for maybe not pulling the trigger quick enough on that change. That is fair. But we know that Kirk Cousins basically became not good enough and cost this team from winning the NFC South. And I think, to me, that, again, for a team that wanted to try to make sure quarterback wasn't an issue, it became an issue again. Because every year there's a stretch of games where Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota, or Kirk Cousins have this terrible stretch of games, and that's what really ends the Falcons season. And listen, Michael Penix, we'll see what he'll go through next year. Penix hasn't, his first 2 games, you maybe will say he didn't light it up, but he didn't have bad games. He just didn't have great games. He just had okay games. First game, he had a good game. Wasn't perfect, didn't score a touchdown, but you saw what people liked. Second game, he missed a lot of throws in that game. Let's just be honest. Michael Penix missed a lot of touchdown-worthy throws against the Commanders. But that also has to do with lack of reps and chemistry that he has with the receivers. And then the third game, get more time with these guys. Boom, now you see him, Drake London, big catches. And they didn't have Darnell Mooney that game, so he was lighting it up without Darnell Mooney. So for me, Michael Penix is the one thing that every Falcons fan can look into and say, something? That's something I can look forward to. That's something that I can look ahead to, knowing that we have that position seemingly fixed. Finally, with a player that can hold that position down for the next 10 years, that we won't have to worry about if Michael Penix is going to be the quarterback past next year because of age or something like that. Obviously, barring injury, I think that security is going to be one of the biggest things that Falcons fans are going to love, knowing that they can look forward. Because everybody keeps saying, as long as they don't ruin Penix's development. The offense, he has the weapons. Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. Like I said, your biggest question is Kyle Pitts, right? And maybe upgrading wide receiver 3. And then obviously the tackle spots. Really Caleb McGarry because he's now his blind side because he's a left-handed quarterback. But outside of that, you feel very strongly about this Falcons offense. I mean, you saw the Washington game. Didn't have greatest game, missed throws, still composed. Remember, when that ball went over Bijan's head and we thought, oh my God, this game's over, we're about to lose on this type of play. He got them boom, 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 touchdown, tie game, overtime. That's poise. That shows the moment's not too big for him. And that shows growth. Michael Penix is the one thing that is going to keep the Falcons fan optimistic-ish enough. Because if Penix lights it up next year, you're going to assume, unless the defense is hot cheeks next year, the Falcons should be a better team. And I think that's what a lot of people are counting on, is that Penix takes another step, offense continues to be great, and then if you could fix things on the defensive side of the ball, the Falcons should be a playoff team next year. Like that's the thing about this team, is that the fixes are there. You can fix the team talent-wise in their issues. You just have to go do it. This isn't a situation where they have to overhaul every single position. You just have to make the necessary changes that are there. And when you do that, then you should be able to be a playoff team next year. But like I've said, it's going to be hard to fully be confident in it after what we've seen and people's questions about Raheem and everything else. So as much as people want change, Raheem will probably be here. And that's what it is. So now we have to look forward and say, what changes will he make to try to fix what has happened? And that will be what we will continue to follow throughout this entire offseason. I will have someone on here Wednesday, Thursday, to talk more in depth about some of the big decisions the Falcons have going into the offseason. So I definitely hope you guys come back for that. I appreciate you guys listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and follow me on Twitter, Pricey_2K. So that's my initial thoughts right now on the Falcons coming out of their season-ending loss to the Panthers. A lot of question marks, a lot of big decisions to be made. We will obviously be keeping up and following along with every decision that ends up being made moving forward. I appreciate you guys tuning in. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.